Welcome back to the Real Intelligence Podcast. I'm your host, Jenny Swim, and I'm so glad you're here. Today, we're going to talk about rejection. Rejection is one of the most common human experiences. In fact, since we were little children, we experience rejection, right? We didn't get picked for something on the playground. We weren't invited to some birthday party. We weren't chosen to be in the school play. We weren't wanted in the way we hoped. Now, as we get older, we still experience rejection. It just changes form. Maybe we don't get the job, or we're passed over for the promotion. Maybe we feel ghosted on social media, or we're dismissed, or we have distance in a relationship instead of the connection we're hoping for. Rejection is one of those experiences that can feel so big in our system. And sometimes I find that people feel really confused because their brain is telling them, I shouldn't make this a big deal. I really need to let this go. I can't let this bother me. You see the words shouldn't, can't, need, but they're not arriving there. There's some disconnect, right? Because in their system is saying, this really hurts. I don't know what to do with this. And their brain's like, yeah, just get over it. It's not a big deal. Let it go. And so that there's this real discomfort that happens in the brain-body system. There's a well-known study where participants were placed in this simple virtual ball toss game. And while they were playing this game, their brains were being scanned. At first, everyone's included, and then pretty soon, one by one, people start to be excluded. And what the researchers found was really interesting. They noticed that the brain responded to that exclusion in the same way it would with distress and pain processing. So in other words, the rejection, when we feel rejection or we feel that exclusion, we are having a physical response to that. It helps explain why it's so difficult sometimes to move on from these experiences of feeling rejection. Because it touches something so much deeper in us. It touches on our sense of belonging, our sense of safety, our sense of connection, and even our sense of worth. So if you've ever felt like rejection is heavier than you think it should be, you're in good company. Most of us have this experience with feeling like there's a mismatch between how we want to respond to rejection and how we really feel in our system. Now, newer research adds something really important. It says that not only is the brain responding to rejection as though it's a pain in the body, like it really has that ouch factor to it, but our brain is also learning from it. So our brain is assessing, okay, what does this rejection mean? Who feels safe to me? Where do I belong? How do I avoid this happening again? So that rejection experience doesn't just leave us with pain, it now leaves us with these patterns. And if we don't recognize these patterns, they can shape who we trust, how much we risk, how open we stay, and how quickly we start to brace for disconnection. So pretty soon, our system starts to be the driver, right? It's saying, oh, nope, we don't want to take that risk, even though that risk might be a good choice for us, right? So understanding this brain-body connection and how our brains are really trying to keep us safe, our bodies are trying to keep us safe, can really help us to step back, take a really good look when we have these rejection experiences so that these patterns don't start running our system, so that we are still the authority of our system. We are still acting from that place of real intelligence. We're staying in that home base place versus reacting to our past experiences. Now, I know that you're probably thinking, okay, that's way easier said than done. But again, awareness just helps us to make decisions. And if you take anything from today, just even something small, even that can help us rewrite and change around some of the patterns that maybe we've already set in our life around rejection. So today I want to start with noting, what is rejection? How do we commonly respond to rejection so we can start to see and understand some of the patterns we've already developed, right? Real intelligence is about taking a deep look at the data from our minds, from our bodies, from our heart, from our life, from our social interactions. We're going to take a good look at that, understand how we respond, Then we're going to narrow this down into the two basic responses that most people have, some watch outs. And then, of course, at the end, we'll talk about some practical tools we can use to start responding to rejection in a way that actually helps us take the learnings and be resilient from the experience, move on a better, wiser, stronger person. Okay, so let's start with just defining rejection. I'm sure everyone is going to have their own definition for this. For today's purposes, let's just simply define rejection as some form of refusal. So now let's notice, how do you experience this rejection? Think of something that you've experienced in the last month, some form of refusal or rejection or any other synonym you want to put with that this month. Maybe it was something big, right? Maybe you were passed over for that promotion, or you didn't get a job, or you had a fallout in a relationship, or maybe it was something really subtle. Maybe you did something kind for someone and they didn't notice or thank you. Maybe you didn't feel seen. Maybe you offered something on social media and no one really responded. Maybe you didn't get invited to something that everyone else got invited to. What do you notice in your system as you think back on that experience? What happened in your system? Were there emotions that were present? Were there thoughts that were present for you? I want to share 5 behaviors that I see as patterns in people. See if any of these land for you. Again, as we just step back and start to look at some of the patterns we've created from the rejection in our life, then we're better able to make a decision of how we might want to move forward. We're more aware, and that awareness can help us make different choices as we move forward. Okay, so number 1, a common behavior is that we start to ruminate. We mentally ruminate, we loop our thinking, and we replay the interaction. We analyze the interaction. We search for what we missed. We're trying to make sense of it. This happens because our brain is trying to restore certainty. We thought something was one way. I thought I was qualified for this job and then I didn't get the job. There's an imbalance. There's a disconnect there for me. So I need to start to understand what happened to make sense of this. Whatever that rejection was for you, mental looping can be a common behavior. Number 2, this one is a really sneaky one. This is when we take it personally. So instead of making the rejection about a fact, we make the rejection about our identity. So this might look like, I didn't make the soccer team. And the fact is that my skill level was not as good as the other player's skill level. What can happen is I can say, well, they didn't like me because I'm not likable. I must not matter. I'm just not enough. My skill is different than my worth. But it's so easy to conflate those two and to make them the same when we take it personally. That's a very common behavior I notice for people as well. Remember, our skill, or even the value we might play in one organization or to one team, is not equal to our worth or our identity. Okay, so number 3 behavior is that we can tend to pull back. So when we feel rejected, right, it's kind of like touching that hot stove and we pull our hand back. It burned, it hurt. There was something there that caused that distress. So oftentimes we will withdraw. We'll take less risk. We'll be less open. We'll try less. We'll be less honest. And we start to get a little bit smaller. We start to really curl into that protection stance, that reactive response of protecting ourselves. The next behavior is that we can actually become more alert or become more controlling of the situation. That's another reactive response. We start to really notice all the signals. We're noticing tone, distance, subtle shifts in connection, delayed responses. Our system is on high alert to scan what is happening. It's asking questions like, am I safe here? Am I still wanted? Did anything change? We start to have this really high focus on what's happening, and we're paying such close attention. Again, so we can keep ourselves safe. The fifth behavior that I commonly notice is that we start to comply or people please. So we don't want that to happen again. So we don't want the rejection to happen again. So we start editing ourselves in order to stay in connection, to stay liked, to stay valuable, to be pleasing to someone, to be accommodating to someone. We often see this with preteens, teens. Frankly, we see it with even with us as adults. But you go in, you notice what's happening with your peers, and then you start adopting some of their practices, their languages, their styles, their behaviors, because we want to be part of the group. So we have these common behaviors. Typically, did you notice yourself in any of these common behaviors? Number 1, overthinking, really ruminating on it. Number 2, taking it personally, making it about yourself. Number 3, pulling back to protect yourself. Number 4, high levels of scanning or controlling to keep yourself safe. Or number 5, a lot of complying or people pleasing to keep yourself safe. It's okay that you do one or more of these. They're common to humanity. This is what we tend to do. Now, the power comes in understanding this is what I tend to do. Because when we see it, we can say, oh, look, I'm experiencing some rejection here. There's something happening in my system that is causing my system to believe we're in a dangerous place. Okay, so we've just looked at what our tendencies might be. What did you discover for yourself? If we step back and we look at rejection in general and these behaviors, we tend to do one of two things. We tend to internalize when we feel rejected or externalize it. And all this means is if I'm internalizing it, I'm taking the blame. This is my fault. If I could just be smarter, better, stronger, more whatever, then I wouldn't have been rejected. Or we externalize it. This is their fault. What's wrong with them? Why is this company so plagued with poor leaders? Both cases, we're trying to make sense of it, but we're finding a place to blame because that helps our brain, again, return to some sense of certainty. Now, to be fair, sometimes rejection really is unfair and people are unkind and systems are flawed. But even then, it can be helpful to ask ourselves when we're experiencing these 5 behaviors or we're noticing that we're blaming ourselves or blaming someone else, to just step back and say, okay, what's happening here? These behaviors, these signals are telling me my system is not feeling safe. My system is indicating something is out of balance. Now, I want to just insert a watch out here because one of the things I commonly see is that we have people who will project a lot of strength and they'll say things like, I don't care what other people think. I'm over it. I'm letting it go. It's not my business what they think of me. And while all that might be true in their mind and they want that to be the case, it's not really true in their system. It's really important to be careful here because what I notice is that sometimes people don't actually develop resilience when they experience rejection. They're just building numbness. So that projected strength is actually just lots of layers of protection or wall around them to create numbness to reduce the pain. They actually haven't moved through the process of healing to feel better. What happens with this, why it can be so dangerous, is it's very disconnecting. So numbness is a way we disconnect. We disconnect from other people. We disconnect from honesty. We disconnect from openness, real connection, and ultimately ourselves on some level. Real resilience isn't about becoming untouchable or not feeling pain. Real resilience means we can feel the sting, but we don't lose ourselves in it. Okay, so that's just a watch out. We're not trying to develop numbness. We're trying to not lose ourselves. And we're trying to be the one, again, that's the agent in our life, not just reliving patterns, but really being aware of how we might be experiencing rejection so that we have a little bit more choice in the matter of how we might want to move forward. Okay, so how do we move forward? I know this is not like, oh, I just do this one step and then I'm a totally new person and everyone's singing kumbaya. I realize that. Each of these things introduce some space into our system so we can do something differently. The other thing I love about these things I'm going to share today is that they also allow us to process the rejection because, again, it's so easy for us to just feel the pain, numb the pain, and move on. These are some really easy ways we can pause to process versus skip over. Okay, so the first one you've heard me say multiple times, and that is we name it to tame it. This is very simple, but we don't always do it. And when we feel a rejection, it's easy to just be like, "Oh, I'm overreacting. I shouldn't overreact. I need to get over this." Instead of saying that landed as rejection for me, just naming it in your system. I felt unseen. I felt left out. I felt overlooked. Just noting that, again, the science tells us just simply naming what is present for us can help release those soothing neurotransmitters to calm our system. Number 2, notice what's happening in your body. Where do you feel tension? Because we experience rejection in this brain-body connection, we can go through the door of the body to affect the brain. Many times we do top down, right? We try to outthink it or willpower something away. But sometimes the most coherent way of building that capacity in our system is actually to go in through the body. And a really simple practice is called willing hands. All you do here is you unclench your fist, you relax your shoulders, and you rest your palms upward. And this is just sending a signal to your mind that I'm open, that I'm not holding, that I'm not tight. And it just signals, yes, this happened and this was hard, and I can still stay with myself. I can still be in this moment. I'm not locking it down by clenching inward. So just noticing and opening is a great way to send a signal to your brain that things aren't as dangerous as it might feel. Okay, step number 3, or option number 3, is to create some sort of movement. Is there a step forward you can take? Could you take a walk? Could you journal? Could you text someone? This was really hard. Praying, crying, asking for feedback, resting. So some sort of movement that allows you to just continue this forward processing of whatever the experience was. This just helps to loosen that discomfort that you might have experienced. Number 4 would be offering a reframe. So once you've kind of loosened this up in your system just a little bit, it's not feeling the sting as intensely as it did in the beginning, right? Because you've named it, because you've helped your body relax a bit into it. You've created some sort of motion and movement in your system. And this might take time, right? This might not be within 5 minutes. It might be over days or weeks or longer. If this was a really deep and difficult rejection, you could ask yourself a question like, could this be a fit or misalignment issue rather than some sort of personal failure? Could this rejection be information rather than some sort of indictment on me? Or could this be a redirect in my life? Could this be opening up a new path for me? What's a gift of this rejection? Starting to ask your brain some of those other questions, and perhaps doing this with a partner, can be really helpful as a way to just open up new ways of thinking about this experience. Now, rejection is part of being human. We've all felt it. We all know that it's painful. If you live, if you love, if you lead someone, if you create it all, if you take any sort of risk, if you have any sort of hope, if you care for anything, you're going to experience rejection. And hopefully, what stood out today is that the goal is not to become someone who can't feel it. We don't want to create numbness in our system. The goal is to become someone who can notice it and go through it. Rejection can teach us. It can bring wisdom, it can bring empathy, it can bring compassion, it can build character, absolutely. It can expose things perhaps we haven't seen before, but it doesn't get to define our worth. And it doesn't have to shape the way we move through every relationship and risk and experience in our life. It does not get to decide how open we stay or how small we become or how much of ourself we hide or what we think we're worthy of. So next time you feel rejection, I want to invite you to do just one thing. Pause before you let it tell you who you are. Pause long enough to be with yourself. What happened? What hurt? What would it look like to stay with myself here? When rejection lands, don't let it author your next move. Let awareness do that. Let truth do that. Let self-trust do that. This is real intelligence. Thanks so much for joining me today. If this episode felt meaningful or helpful to you, I'd invite you to share it with someone else who may need it too. Until we meet again.